And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. So I will just want to make that for the record, and I want to give credit to these people up here. Because when you start opening up those lanes to let kids in who traditionally couldn't get into AP, you're changing. Change is never hard. And we get pushback from a lot of different places, but our board has stood for the right things. They have fought to make sure that our students had access, even to our low-income students and our minority students who typically wouldn't have gotten in. In the 1980s, in this district, every one of our schools had low-income numbers that you could count on one hand. Today, we're a majority minority at Maine East and Maine West. We're a majority low-income at those schools, and our kids there are performing better than any kids in the history of this district. So to suggest otherwise is just simply not in line with the facts. There are a lot of organizations now that rank schools. Many of them pull data from a lot of different places. What I will tell you right now is by every objective measure, our schools are as good as they've ever been in this moment, and our trajectory lines look like this. Our college degrees are rising. Our kids, to your point, are getting into those classes. We're working on, in fact, right now, ways for our kids to get an associate's degree before they leave high school.
Well,
to do
that's
exactly
fantastic.
what you just said.
I didn't know that, and
Yeah.
like I said,
That's why I want you to stay a couple minutes.
well,
And,
thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
But again, the credit goes to this Board of Education. Without a great board, we can't do those things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Do you have any these gifts?
These gifts are from Virginia. I can say that for me. But Virginia's much more thoughtful than I. And first of all, remember the day. I have to be honest. I lost it in a minute. But now that I know it's a day and it's in front of me here, I wanted to give the board the appropriate accolades they deserve. And I do mean that sincerely. When no one knows the things that go on in a district that's this big and this complex and this diverse, and no one really fully understands that. It's easy on the outside to look on the outside and speculate on what happens. Here's what I know. The group of people that I am blessed to work with at this table are the smartest, kindest, most ethical people I've ever worked with. We are who we are because of the power of this board. I would stack this board up against anywhere in the nation. If anything, this board is exemplary in terms of what a board ought to look to try to be like. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any board members this month?
I just have a quick update regarding was it last week, October 24th, IASB, Illinois Association of School Board, the North School, they had a event, and including our president, Lawrence, and 3 other members, myself as well, we were able to attend and support the occasion. And we had great speakers, and we had online and great educational networking was held. And I brought a couple of extra informational stuff, such as advocacy for school board members, school board leadership, guide to recruiting school board candidates, and a few others. So I brought some extra, so anybody who might be interested in that, you may do so.
Thank you. They were enjoyable speakers, I would say.
Sure.
Any other updates? Okay. Buildings and Grounds Committee report. Terry?
Yes, the Buildings and Grounds Committee was held on October 24th, 2018, and meeting was called to order at 5 p.m. We heard from Jay Baum, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, who updated the committee on change orders from projects completed over the summer of 2018. Projects with calculated overages are the cafeterias and Maine South tennis courts. The 3 school cafeterias have an overage of $46,093, but individual costs are being negotiated. The overage on the South tennis courts is just under $14,000 due to soil compaction when tearing up the lot and with the electrical not being up to code. The project has yet to be completed. When taking all summer projects under consideration, the current change order amount is $124,448.24, less than budget. Once the change order package is complete, it would be brought to the board for approval. We had a Main West sign bid. The Main West Oakton Street sign went out to bid with a budget of $25,000. The lowest bidder that came in was $62,000, so the district recommends rejecting all bids and tabling the concept to a future date due to increased cost of the budget. The cost sign will undergo a facelift with painting and replacement of the outer plexiglass cover. All projects we had an outstanding projects update as well. All projects have been completed with the exception of the main south tennis courts, which are due to be completed by November 20th and will undergo painting in the spring. Installation of the top surface was delayed by the subcontractor, and work can only be performed when weather permits. We also have had an update on the 2019-2020 smaller projects, and we had the 2019-20 major building projects were reviewed by the committee in September and board approved in October. Added to each school are a minibus, interior door replacement, and floors. These projects will be completed over summer 2019. And the meeting was adjourned at 5:33 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee met on the same night, October 24th, and it was called to order at 5:33 p.m. following the adjournment of Building and Grounds. All three board members, Coyleby and Sullivan, were present. We discussed 5 topics. The 2018 tax levy, which is to be presented in tender format tonight at tonight's meeting. The 2017-2018 tuition cost. We discussed in depth what that means in terms of analyzing our per student costs and how it's assessed. We currently have 2 students that now moved to the district. Next item was the investment volatility report, which talks about the rise and fall of interest rates and what the effect is on the district's investments. And then we reviewed the policies that are currently reviewed through the press, as well as the procedure discussion, which are not generally part of the press policies. And with that, the meeting is adjourned at 5:47 p.m.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the Education Committee. Aurora?
Sure. So the Education Committee met on October 25 at 6 p.m. Members present were myself and Coyle. Bussler was not available at that time. Others present were Sean Messmer, David Theory, and Jenny Edwards. We discussed several items. First one is the policy review and rewrite, the conversion of the new Series 8, which is referred to as community relations, education-related policies, went for first reading at the October board meeting. There are 2 policies which had suggested clarifying language changes. 820E, which is the exhibit for community use of school facilities, has added hold harmless language. And 831, which is media access to school events, lays out protocol for staff engaging with media. Second item we discussed, the included course on transcript. Currently, when a student repeats a course, the transcript shows all courses taken and grades earned. With the revised language, transcripts will only reflect the course taken and the highest grade earned, so as not to disadvantage a student with a lower grade on their transcript. The other item discussed, the new course proposals and name changes for 2019-20 went for first reading at the October board meeting. Since then, there's been an additional new course falling under engineering design, which is CAD 210. This dual credit course will be offered next year at all 3 schools. And finally, we discussed District 207's communication arts requirement, which is a change to policy 6300, graduation requirements, and it expands the way students earn graduation requirement credit in oral communications through several other courses, successful participation in debate team, drama 1, 2, 3, or 4, theater communications, technical theater, broadcasting, or advanced TV and film satisfies the communication arts graduation requirement. And this policy will actually be discussed later on. We'll be voting on it tonight. With that, the Education Committee adjourned at 6:20 p.m.
Thank you very much. All of our committee reports. Moving on to monthly status of finances. Mary?
In your board packet is the September financial statement. September represents 25% of the fiscal year completed. As you can see, the revenue and expenditures are in line with previous years. I want to point out that at your place is a new chart for the expenditures. While the figures were correct, the bar chart didn't show the percentages for the health, life, safety, and capital projects fund, so we updated that, included that in your packet. All of the funds are in line. Of course, when we talk about the capital projects or health, life, safety fund, the expenditure percentage is dependent upon the portion of the contracts that have already been completed as of the end of September and paid. So in any given year, you'll see some variety in terms of that percentage based on where we're at with those contracts. But certainly those projects will be in line with budget. As you can tell, our summer building projects will be slightly under the budget. The second part is, as indicated earlier, the investment volatility report. This does show the fluctuation in the carrying value to market value. Because we're on the accrual basis of counting, we are required at the end of the year to make a one-time paper entry that reflects our carrying value versus market. So we've gone to quarterly taking a look at what that number could be, because in some years that could be a substantially high adjustment, in other years it could be a negative adjustment. Because interest rates are rising, that means that the market value of our longer-term investments is falling slightly. So if our fiscal year were to end on September 30th, we would be booking a market value adjustment of $1.5 million. Now, why I call this a paper adjustment is we hold our investments to maturity, so we have no recognized loss in them. So when we have a $1.5 million CD, we're earning all of the interest on that, and we're not selling it on the secondary market. I will entertain any questions anybody has on the September financial report or the investment volatility report.
Any questions? Thank you, Mary. Instructional services. Sean?
Thank you. So what you have in your board packet is what was released on October 31st. This is the school report card for the state of Illinois. As you can see, Maine East and Maine West both earned a commendable rating, and Maine South earned an exemplary rating, as based upon the new formula for school rankings in the state by ISBE. And that those percentages, we had a presentation in October to kind of explain what to expect for that report. And so you can see on page 2 of the memo, it does give you a breakdown of how they arrive at those rankings. And I entertain any questions you might have on the school report cards.
Is this on our, do we put this up on the website?
It is. It is immediately posted to the website, and it's also available for Illinois State school report cards. If you Google that, you can find just about it. Well, you can find every school, public school ranking in Illinois.
Weren't there some parts that weren't going to be complete? Is everything that they wanted to report on here?
There are sections that the state has not yet built out, and then therefore next year will then be part of the ranking. So for example, they haven't built out the specifics of the career and college readiness factors that are outside of an SAT score. So as they develop those and define them and give us an opportunity to actually report on those, they'll then become part of the report cards for each school in the future.
We do think regardless of what those are, we'll be well positioned for those.
Any questions on the school report cards? Okay, thank you, Sean. Ken, monthly update on FOIA requests?
7 this month, all have been responded to, are in the process of being responded to.
Policy, first reading. Mary?
We are presenting 5 policies for first reading this evening. The first is identity protection. This policy has the latest notification language that is required by law. It is by and large a number change as we move this policy from our current policy to the press policy numbering system. The second is the asset capitalization. Our current capitalization threshold is $2,500. As we looked to do a full physical inventory, we found that our asset capitalization was lower than the 5,000 of the rest of the school districts in our insurance cooperative. So we're requesting it be moved $5,000 on an individual item. There are probably less than 5 items a year that fall between the $2,500 and the $5,000 mark. Many of those are musical instruments, which we inventory and track regardless of cost. And that is the only change on that policy. The next is the environmental quality of buildings and grounds. We're updating it to the latest press policy with procedures from this policy coming later. Our current policy had kind of policy and procedures mixed together, so now we're breaking those two apart. The fourth is the pandemic preparedness policy. Similar to the other one, we're separating policy and procedure. Much of the language is still there, and we're renumbering it. And finally, in number change only is compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. There are no substantive changes. We are just moving that number over to the press numbering system.
Is that, that's not a press policy, or it is?
It is press policy.
Oh, it is press, okay.
But it's a press policy that we adopted a
Already.
few years ago,
Okay.
so the language is not changing.
Okay. Do you have any questions on any of those? All right. Okay, could I have a motion on our consent agenda, items A through G?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Ginny, would you take the roll?
Austriaco?
Aye.
Bessler?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Coyle?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Aye, and I'll abstain on A.
And Owen.
Aye. Okay, could I have a motion on item 9, Board of Education policies? This is a second reading.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Sean?
So the policies that we have here are the new 8 series, community relations. We have gone through those in first reading in October, and as mentioned by Member Austriaco, we made some slight changes upon recommendations of that first meeting to adjust 2 of those policies. Basically, one with the whole harmless agreement helping us to protect the district, and the other with some clarification language around interaction with media. The other policy, 6:300, that we're asking to go directly to second reading, basically we're asking for this so that it can be in the course catalog, so that students are aware as they're selecting courses that now there are a handful of new courses that would satisfy the communications art requirement that we have in the district. So this provides a greater level of flexibility to students to be able to satisfy that requirement through some other the courses that we offer.
You said that was 6,300, right?
6:300,
Oh.
yes.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Ginny, would you take the roll?
Sullivan?
Aye.
Austriaco?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Bessler?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Coyle?
Aye.
Owen.
Aye. Could I have a motion on item 10, new course proposals and course names?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Sean?
So this is actually part of, I had mentioned last month when we did a broader adoption of the courses that we might be bringing you 1 or 2 as they roll on in connection with Oakland Community College. And so this is one of those. It's an engineering and design course, which can be a capstone course for our students here. And what this enables them to do is get a course under their belt as they start towards a certification at Oakland. So this is a really nice program for our students to be able to take if they're interested in earning certifications once they leave our building. So it is a dual credit, dual enrollment course.
And that will be for next year? That's
That
what
would
it's-
be offered for next year.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Ginny, would you take the roll?
Coyle?
Aye.
Bessler?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Austriaco?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Owen.
Aye. Do I have a motion on the 2018 tax levy?
So moved. Second.
Okay, do we want to read this with some?
What's it, is that a calendar item, correct?
This is
This
just
is-
what we adopted in tentative form in November.
Yeah. It just says that we have public hearing.
The resolutions will not be adopted until December.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
You want to go over this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the 2018 tax levy is based on the December 2017 Consumer Price Index for all consumer items, which came in at 2.1%. So under the property tax extension limitation law, you can only get a CPI increase plus any new growth. So we are requesting a tax levy of 3.12%, with the difference between 2.1 and 3.12 being new growth. We're expecting about $25 million in new growth, but we're levying for $50 million. As you can see, there are a number of new construction projects going up within the district. So we want to make sure that we capture the new growth the year that it comes on the tax rolls. And that under the property tax extension limitation law, the only thing that you can capture above CPI is new property. And you can only capture it in the year that it comes on the tax rolls.
So to make it clear for everybody in the room, the levy that we're proposing for existing homes
It's
is,
2.1%.
which is the CPI cap.
Correct,
And anything else is just to capture new construction development growth.
correct.
The apartment buildings we're seeing throughout the district. In my neighborhood, I'm seeing tear downs and new home building at probably the most expensive I live here.
Okay. Okay, so one of the other things that we do is, even though we are not required by law to follow the truth in taxation, you are required, if you ask for a levy greater than 5% of the previous year's extension, to notify the community by putting that tax levy information in the newspaper. We have chosen, because of transparency, to publish our tax levy in the newspaper. We anticipate that to happen before November 26th. Then, because we want to follow the truth in taxation, that we'll have a public hearing on the tax levy at our December board meeting. Those are extra steps that we take in order to inform the community and give them a chance and opportunity to address the board.
Even though it's not required.
It is not required by law because we are not asking for greater than 5%.
And we've always done it.
We've always done it. This is what we believe we do in order to provide the most transparent tax levy that we possibly can. Then after the public hearing, the tax levy is required to be filed with the county by the last Tuesday, which just happens to be a holiday this year. So we're not sure, but we file it early anyway, so it doesn't matter. It will be filed by that last Tuesday or the date that the county requires it to be filed.
Okay, any questions or anything? Okay, well, Ginny, would you take the roll?
Austriaco?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Fessler?
Aye.
Coyle?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Abstain?
And Owen.
Aye. Could I have a motion on item 12, approval of the tuition cost per pupil 2018-19?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mary, this is pretty quick.
So the tuition cost per pupil is a calculation that the state does. If we were to have any student who was a non-resident of District 207 but chose to attend our school, which we have in the past, we used to have two, they've both now moved into the district. This is the tuition rate we would charge them, which is $18,732.89. That is a decrease over last year of 2.2%. Our allowable expenditures went down 2.8%, primarily because of the amount that we're putting in terms of capital outlay, as well as our enrollment had a 0.8% decrease.
Okay, any questions on that?
So you currently have two students or?
No, both of those students have moved into the district, so we currently have 0 students, but if someone should move in second semester, this is the rate that we set contractually that they would be charged.
And annually, it hasn't really changed much. This year, we have decreased 2.2% compared to the previous years as well.
Correct.
Okay, there's no other questions. Ginny, would you take the roll?
Sullivan?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Coyle?
Aye.
Fessler?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Austriaco?
Aye.
Owen.
Aye. Could I have a motion on items 13A and B?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mary? would you do that?
As indicated earlier, we are recommending that we reject all of the bids for the Main West Oakton sign, and we refurbish the sign, which will be within budget. the bid was a second electronic sign for Maine West, and we felt that, given the fact that they already have one and the other schools don't have any, and it was over budget, that we should reject it and refurbish it. And the other item is, we brought early all of the large capital projects, which will need many months to design and plan, but there are some items that we've always included, our allowance for doors and floors replacement, as well as a minibus replacement, that we wanted to make sure that we had the complete list. Those are smaller projects, but we wanted to make sure that the board had the full picture for what our capital project expenditures would be for next year.
Smaller being dollar amount?
Smaller being dollar amount, because we may do, the floor replacement might be 4 rooms of carpeting, for which they will get multiple quotes, because one might be a VCT tile, one might be carpeting. So that those are not necessarily projects that would require 3 or 4 months of designing to do. And same thing with the doors, a set of doors, they look at the worst of the worst doors and replace, whether it be an interior or exterior doors. Those are generally between $4,000 and $5,000 a set of doors. So those are under the bidding threshold, but those are just allowance amounts that we have carrying forward.
And the total dollar value of the smaller projects 2019, 2020
Is about $105,000, $25,000 for floors, $25,000 for doors, and we're estimating the minibuses at $60,000. Minibuses, because they are above $25,000, will be bid, similar to this year.
Okay.
For
Any
the
other
street, for the street sign bids, compared to our initial budget, which was 25,000, and when we got an estimate from 6 different companies, and they're far much higher than our expected, why is that be?
Because as they were looking at the electrical requirements for the sign aid transformer, which is a large-scale electrical feed, was going to be required to provide the electrical to the sign. So that is what drove the project over budget.
Jen, the actual sign is not very expensive, but it's the installation that was gonna cost, that drove it up to $60,000, because we didn't have the base electrical for it.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Jenny, please take the roll.
Lee, Collins,
Aye.
Coyle, Austriaco,
Aye.
Sullivan, Bessler,
Aye.
Owen.
Aye. Okay, could I have a motion on items 14A and B?
So
Just-
moved.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. I'm just going to summarize these. We don't have to have two principals really go over them. This is the waiver of fees, or reduction of fees, actually. Well, it's a waiver, right? Is it a total waiver?
No.
No, it's partial. $495, this is for academic tutoring. I'm really not doing a very good job with this. Maybe I should do that.
We do this every year.
Yeah, we do this every year. I just didn't feel like they both needed to talk about it. So it's a $495 waiver for Maine East, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And then $555 for Maine West.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that?
Can I just ask, does anybody, any other tutoring group ask to use our space?
Well, this is tutoring specifically for SAT prep, so it's one of the
Right,
tutoring
but
sessions.
There's other.
We have another
companies that
vendor.
ask.
Who's the other vendor?
Excel Edge.
Excel Edge, yes. The answer is yes, Paula.
And
And
give it to
we
them.
allow them to do so?
Yes, same thing. We
Okay.
asked
I
for,
think that's important.
yeah, we asked for relief for some students.
Okay, just making, thank you.
I have a question. Does the same thing occur at Maine South?
Yes.
It's just not done right now today?
Yeah, it's the different vendor that we're talking about.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Ginny, would you take the roll?
Coyle,
Aye.
Austriaco,
Aye.
Sullivan, Lee, Bessler,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Owen.
Aye. Okay, calendar items. Are there any things that we'd like to add here? School is closed tomorrow for students. There is a joint annual conference. it's actually should be corrected, it's the 16th through the 18th of 2017, 2018, okay? Please don't catch
That's
it.
why I couldn't know.
It was an out of body
His
experience.
flux capacitor is broken.
Our finance, buildings and grounds and education, or do you want to add anything here, or just gonna?
So there is no need for finance, building and grounds in November.
Education, anything?
Will you provide any updates in Friday notes then?
Yes,
Okay.
although there will be no action items for December and those items.
I was just thinking of like updates on projects like
Yeah.
tennis
Tennis
courts.
courts.
Like, yes, it's done.
No kidding.
Okay, then our next regular meeting and the public hearing is on December 3rd, okay? Are there any other communications or public comments? Okay, okay. Could I have a motion to go into closed session for purposes of review of closed session minutes, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and probable imminent or pending litigation? Thank you. Take the roll.
Austriaco?
Aye.
Bessler?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Coyle? Lee? Sullivan?
Aye.
Owen?
Aye. Okay, going into closed session.